have been awesome. I don't know about you, Eddie, but there's some things in there that make me super excited.
Yep, it's in a surprise twist. There is some brand new Stormcast on the way. No one saw it coming. Well, it's not true. We all saw it coming, but I think we're always pleased to see them. So, brand new Stormcast Eternal miniatures. Lots more stuff on the way to expand your Dominion set. And I think what the new range of Stormcast basically allow you now to do is to, if you want to, create an entire army of Thunderstrike equipped warriors. Yep. This guy is a breeze block of pain. This is Bastian Catalos. He is the supreme commander of the Hammers of Sigmar. This is the highest ranked Stormcast we have seen yet. So he is in all of the gold and blue Stormcast. This is the guy who is in charge of all of them. All of the Lord Commanders of the various different Warrior Brotherhoods and Vanguard Brotherhoods answer to this guy. And as you would imagine, he is a absolute powerhouse on the battlefield and a beautiful model.
Yeah, I mean, from even before I get to the lore considerations about having a model who is essentially the head honcho for an entire Storm host, I just can't move past what an incredible miniature this is. Just the design on it is outstanding. It's very possibly my favourite Stormcast Eternals bare head and my favourite Stormcast Eternals helmeted head. The pose striding forward is outstanding, and we look like we've got options for him to be holding his hammer in two ways. Man, I genuinely love this model.
Yeah, there's a few options in the kit actually. So it is a named character, but you have got that head swap option, as you say. You've also got the option to go for a two-handed version of the hammer. That is one of the biggest man-portable hammers in the Mortal Realms as well. The stat line on that thing is atrocious, in terms of the damage it can output. That is a damage 4 hammer.
It's called Uskavar the Sunderer, a bespoke, unique, one-of-a-kind, his only meteoric great hammer, and it is a tenderizer of everything. It looks just great. That's moving us on. I reckon I had another hour in me on that model. But no fear. Here we have the Knight Relictor. Now, we've seen Lord Relictors. There was one in the very first Warhammer Age of Sigmar boxed game. So there are two principal ranks within the sort of officer class of the Stormcast Eternals. You have the Lords and the Knights, and this is a Knight Relictor. Eddie, what's the lowdown?
Yeah, so this is effectively that. So we know a little bit about Relictors as a kind of category of Stormcast, because we know about those. Those are the kind of pious priest-esque sort of versions of the Stormcast, and this guy is a slightly lower rank than the Lord Relictor, but still brings lots of cool abilities to the battlefield. He obviously has abilities to kind of summon the power of Sigmar to smite his foes and to boost nearby allies, and carries a selection of kind of slightly morbid relics to the battlefield, but he's absolutely no slouch in combat either, as there's that enormous mace would indicate, that's going to make a mess if it hits the enemies of Sigmar in the face.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a few questions popped up in the chat. Somebody says higher rank than a Celestin Prime. The Celestin Prime, as I understand it, exists outside of the standard structure of the individual Storm hosts, because he reps all of them, So
that's pretty much it. He doesn't belong to any particular Storm host. He kind of turns up to fix problems like a Bloodthirster.
And then onto this, somebody said, "Is that is that a chest lid on his torso?" Yeah, probably. It looks that way, doesn't it? Like a treasure chest at belt height. If you watched carefully in the video that we showed just before, you also see he's got like a portable reliquary on his back, which looks great. He's carrying a relic sensor, which is pretty swish, and I believe helps to stave off enemy prayers and spells. And he's also got his relic maul, which is just for smashing people in the head. 10 out of 10 need be a Knight Relictor. Next up are the Vanquishers. Eddie, what's the deal?
Yeah, so this is a really cool unit, actually. So one of the things we haven't really seen for the Stormcast is like a sword-wielding unit. So we've had some Stormcast that have swords before, but these are kind of your dedicated swordsmen. They are expert duelists and fencers, and they're swinging these kind of enormous, great Sigmarite great blades around. So they're an interesting option for Stormcast. You can use them as a battle line unit, which means that if these are your jam, you want to go for a slightly more offensive unit rather than the spearmen. You can go for Vanquishers, and their kind of game purpose, I suppose, in terms of what they add to your army, is that they particularly excel at hacking down hordes of enemy troops. So they get bonuses. They're quite good at fighting just against anybody, but they get bonuses for fighting if they are up against big enemy unit. So if the enemy unit is 5 strong, they get a bonus, or 10 strong, they get a bigger bonus. So this is the guys you send in to just take massive sweeps out of big blocks of Oryx or Skaven or skeletons or something like that. But really cool looking models. I think that the miniatures themselves are just a really nice take on the Stormcast aesthetic.
Mm-hmm. You've also got a nice variety of helmeted and unhelmeted, so you can. All of my Stormcasters then will have their helmets on, but I may start branching out because some of these unhelmeted options are incredible. You've also got some options for sort of. I think we saw a flag in the previous slide, and there's a flag in there, and
you've got, I think it looks to me like a Knight Heraldor in training. That's probably not the rules for them, but they certainly, if you blow that trumpet hard enough, maybe Sigmar will promote you to Knight Heraldor. But you get enough bits certainly in the box set to do them all helmeted if you want, or all unhelmeted. And one of the nice things about lots of the new Stormcast kits is that all the various unhelmeted heads can swap and change between units as well, so you can mix and match them quite a lot. So a really, really nice unit, I think. Might be my favourite visually of the Stormcast battle line units, but I mean, there's some good ones. But there's something very cool, I think, about just swinging massive two-handed claymores.
So, as a contender for most exciting Stormcast battle line unit, I think these are a very strong contender in my book, and they can be battle line under certain conditions. Is that right, Eddie?
That's right. Yeah, they're not standard battle line, but if you have the right commander in your army, if you want an archer-themed force, there are ways of making these guys battle line. So Vigilors, a new type of Stormcast archer. This is the archer unit in Thunderstrike armor. So again, if you want to do a Thunderstrike-themed force and you want to add in some range support, these are your guys. They have a slightly more kind of, I suppose, archer scout vibe going for them. So standoffish unit, they'll kind of quite long range. They can hold onto your objectives and pepper the enemy. One of the nice things they do in game terms is if they manage to score some hits on the enemy, other Stormcast units get bonuses against the unit that they've done damage against. So you can combo them quite nicely with some of your more aggressive units, and all of the Stormcast units obviously fight together greater than some of their parts. But a really dynamic unit as well. If you think back to some of the Stormcast sculpts we had of previous editions, they've always had great archer models, but the models have been standing in ranks, all firing the bows the same. These have got some really interesting, looking like they're kind of moving over terrain, stopping, firing, scouting, just some really fun poses, I think.
And then what we're seeing here is how versatile the kit is as well. The kit essentially contains enough variety in there for you to do some really interesting things with your models. Again, you've got the helmeted and unhelmeted things. Sigmar is only interested in picking the best warriors to create his armies. So you've got male and female Stormcast Eternals in this unit. And overall, I'm stoked. The thing I really want to do with these, they look to me like they fit that classic, in my mind, almost ranger aesthetic, sort of scouting out ahead of the army. I quite like the idea of painting them in sort of muddier, drabber tones, like they're infiltrating in ahead.
Other stuff with the robes, couldn't you? So obviously these guys are Hammers of Sigmar. They've gone for kind of gold and blue. They don't look particularly stealthy in that color scheme. But if you wanted to do the cloaks in a kind of almost camo scheme, or that kind of elven cloak kind of aesthetic in greys and browns and greens and things, you could make this unit look quite stealthy if you wanted to.
Somebody's commented, is one reading a magazine? I think it's a map. So
it could be a magazine. They could have already killed all the enemies in range. They'd be like,
it's
little break.
Sort of a brochure on Know Thy Weird Mortal Realms Beasts, perhaps.
So you've been reforged. Yeah.
Love it. Of course, the biggest sort of infantry Stormcast Eternals we've seen, the Stormcast Eternals Annihilators, also get their own new kit, and what a kit it is.
Yeah, so this is the multi-parts Annihilator unit. We got 3 of these guys in your Dominion box set already. The ones you've got in that box come with hammers, one-handed hammers, and shields. And their kind of thing is, obviously, they're the hardest ones to kill. They're very good at dishing out mortal wounds, but they come with that kind of impressive 2-up save, which is pretty formidable. The other way you can kit out Annihilators is you can give these massive 2-handed hammers. And as you'd imagine, the armor save isn't quite as good, so they've got a 3-up save rather than a 2-up save, but they hit even harder than your standard Annihilators do. So if what you want your Annihilators to do is to run in and punch face as hard as possible, the double-handed hammer version might be the one for you. Some really nice things about the kits. You've got options for heads, helmeted or unhelmeted. My favourite thing about this kit is the guy on the right, the prime of the unit, has a bear on his chest plate. So the one you get in the Dominion box is a lion. This guy has a bear, and they're usually inspired by the creatures of High Azir that they've either hunted with or been inspired by, or perhaps had to kind of go on a quest to slay or befriend or whatever it is. And it's just like a nice kind of new aesthetic, and you can imagine the kind of temperament of that guy. If his kind of spirit animal is the bear, he's kind of dropped from space and just run in and maul stuff.
Fantastic. The bear chest plate is an interesting one, isn't it? I'm quite excited to see what people do with that. It's good. Right, there we are. I feel like we've just rattled through at light speed a whole tranche of incredible new Stormcast Eternal models which loom large on the horizon. It promises to be quite the treat. A few people have asked questions in the chat. One of them was, were these the kits, so the unit kits, are they push fit or are they multi-part assembly models? I believe they're all multi-part kits, aren't they, Eddie?
They are multi-part kits, so that they come with some options. They're not push fit. You've got a few options there for things like you can build them as primes or not primes. You can give them command units or not command units, and you can swap and change quite a lot of the head. So there's a little bit more flexibility in the kits than there is for maybe some of the stuff that came in the Dominion box. And certainly things like the Annihilators, you can get that unit and build them, once with hammers and shields, once with great hammers, once with different helmets. So you can buy the kits multiple times and get quite different looking units out of them if you wanted to, which is good, certainly if you want to do a Thunderstrike themed army. And I think that's really what these kits allow you to do, is that if you want to, certainly you can mix them with any Stormcast you've got. If you've already got Liberators or any of the other kind of standard Stormcast from previous editions, you can absolutely mix them in. But you now have the option to make a whole army in the brand new Thunderstrike armor. And remember as well, there's some other units coming, so we know there's
I was about to say, yeah.
There's a character level Archer Lord mixed in amongst the stuff. We've seen that model already, and there's a Stormcast Chariot on the way as well. So there's plenty to look forward to if you're a Stormcast player.
Now the Knight Judicator, is that the model you were referring to?
Yes.
Yeah. Now the Knight Judicator is the model that, if you use that as your general, unlocks the Vigilors as.
I believe that is the case. Yes. So if you want an Archer-themed Stormcast army, kind of scouting ahead and firing off bolts of lightning at the enemy before fading into the trees, you can do that army.
Yes, and I quite like the idea of going full Robin Hood on the enemy and blowing them to pieces with crazy lightning arrows. Sign me right up. Well. Okay, before we push on, because we have got another video and some more exciting things to show, which of the Stormcast Eternals units that we've looked at so far has made it for you, Eddie?
Well, I think that they're all very cool, but I think Bastion Cathalos probably is the one. Like the first time we've seen like a proper, I suppose if in 40k terms, equivalent of like a chapter master level character for the Stormcast Eternals. The model's very cool, but the rules for him are outrageously good. So if you have a Hammers of Sigmar army, you're going to want this guy in your collection. He is very,
and then you
very...
want to whack all the baddies in the face. Frankly, I'm going to get one and paint him in Hallowed Knights colours, and he can
I'm not going to
a hero in my army, because that's how I roll. Nick, who has gone straight from chatting with us to chatting in the chat, says Vigilors for me. I think that's a strong answer, Nick. The Vigilors really are awesome. If my arm was twisted, I'd side with either Bastion Cathalos or with the Knight Relictor, but we've been well treated. Somebody, a good old Only the Faithful in the chat. Somebody in the chat said, I really hope, sorry, there we go, Space Undies, as is any other kind, says, I'm hoping that this, all this Stormcast preview heralds a Crawl Boys preview. Well, I wouldn't like to disappoint. Raph, why don't you play the next video?
So an awful lot of very, very cool stuff on the way for the Uruk Warclans, specifically for the Kruleboyz. And I think that the general theme of the stuff that is on the way for the Uruks is that they've gone into the swamp and they've literally dredged the swamp for all the horrible monsters they could find. Strapped some weird-looking war machines to the back of them and prodded them in the general direction of the enemy, and some very creepy, weird, and frankly horrifying stuff. So we'll start off with the marsh called a Troggoth. Sloggoth, sorry. So it is a Troggoth, but this is one that specifically lives in the swamps of the Mortal Realms, Ghur in particular. A particularly unpleasant version of a Troggoth. If you were thinking, Troggoths, they're pretty gross, they're one of the most unpleasant things in the Mortal Realms, but it's not quite unpleasant enough for me. Is there a way that the Troggoth could in some way be more repugnant? Well, here it is. This is the marsh called a Sloggoth. There is a band of grots on the back of it, and as you can kind of tell from the equipment these guys have, this thing kind of crawls towards the enemy in a very unpleasant, kind of inhuman sort of way, and the grots on the back are effectively trying to grab themselves captives that they can take off to unpleasant fates somewhere in the swamps. So in game terms, what this thing does, obviously it's a monster, it can dish out the pain in up close and close combat, but the grots on the back are specifically trying to grab enemy infantry models and capture them and take them away, so you get some extra bonus attacks to kind of scoop up enemy units in combat. And the other thing it does is you can see there's a grot there on the back with a drum. He's competing for favourite grot of the year, perhaps up against Stab Grot and Pop Grot. It's a crowded field this year, but he's given it a go. You've got Drum Grot, and he is beating that drum, and he basically gives you an aura effect bonus, combat bonus for nearby Kruleboyz, so you can get some extra pluses to hit and things in close combat. So all in, a very creepy, weird-looking model, and a great little addition to your army in game terms as well. So it's a really cool little thing to add into your Kruleboyz army.
The description you described it to me before we began was almost the howdah that the grots are in sort of would float along the top of the swamp as the Sloggoth sort of crawls along the bottom. So
I like to think people think it's just a barge full of grots, right? So they're looking at the swamp and they're like, oh, there's just some grots in a little barge, and they're getting closer. And then as it approaches the edge of the shore, you kind of see this Sloggoth crawling out of the swamp, and it becomes apparent it's not just a boat after all; it's this horrible monster contraption thing.
It's a barrel full of horrors on the back of a nightmare. It's gross.
Absolutely. So there's some options in the kit as well. You get some options for different heads, and you can pose the grots a little bit as well. So it's a really fun kit. Cool. So Gut Rippers. So this is one of the units that you get in the Dominion box set is the Gut Rippers. This is your kind of battle line unit for the Uruk Warclans, and especially if you want to do a Kruleboyz army. And there is a multi-part version coming for this kit. And one of the things that the kit does is it gives you a few more options to throw into your army. So you get options for a hand weapon, a Wicked Hacker, and shield. If you'd rather go for that compared to the spear, and the trade-off effectively is it's a little bit better up close in combat. Doesn't give you the reach in the same way that lots of armies have options for whether they want to have shields and close combat weapons or they want to go with spears. And the other thing it does is it adds in some command elements into your unit as well. So you've got your boss in there, but you've also got banners and you've got horn blowers. There's some drummers in there you can build too. So you've got the option to throw in some extra command elements into your Gut Rippers. And also, if you just wanted to expand your Dominion box set and make sure you didn't have miniatures that look the same, you could build it up in different ways and just give you lots of options to make your army a bit more unique.
The Uruks really, the Uruk Kruleboyz really do have such a sinewy and creepy look to them, don't they? And the weapons, you've got the Wicked Stickers or the Wicked Hackers, depending on your proclivity. Basically, you can be up close and hacky, or slightly further away and sticky, your choice.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it's going to come down to tactics as well. So if you're going for smaller units, sometimes your hackers are the better option, because you can, if you're not too concerned about getting all your guys into close combat because the unit's quite small, sometimes you're better off just having slightly better weapons. If you're going for like a big unit, if you're reinforced and you're going for 20 or even 30 of them, sometimes spears is the better option. But you get the choice for both in that box set, which is cool. And obviously you get loads of new shields as well. So the best thing probably about the Gut Rippers is those kind of really iconic shields, and you've got lots of different faces to play with. So you can do a kind of that weird, wonderful, horrible shield wall effect. But a really, really nice kit. Loads of different options. You could all the command units, loads of different heads. Just a great little kit, really.
Yeah, on the theme of sort of kits that bring some more options to things that we've already seen in Dominion, I believe next up will be the Man Skewer Bolt Boys. a terrifying missile fire unit from the perspective of the Stormcast Eternals, at any rate. And the Manskewer Bolt Boys with their sort of, grot-lengthed bolts and just general horribleness. Eddie, what's the lowdown on these?
Yeah, so this is the Manskewer Bolt Boys we're familiar with from the Dominion box set. They've actually got a surprisingly vicious stat line in terms of their ranged weapons, because not only are they either hitting on 2s at range or dishing out multiple shots at short range, they also have poisoned shots as well, so you're dishing out multiple mortal wounds on 6s to hit, which is pretty scary. You can throw in a commander in there as well, so he gets some extra shots, but he also gives you the opportunity, because he's a unit champion, that you can use command abilities on the unit without needing to kind of babysit them with one of your bosses. So if you want to send your boss off on a Gnash Tooth or something and run off into the middle of the enemy army, not be too concerned about giving out command abilities, you can make sure that there's a boss back there with the inside the unit themselves. And it also gives you the option to kind of bolster that unit, because it's a great choice for things like using the Unleash Hell command ability on them. So if enemies charging this unit will have to, face down a flurry of bolts. So it's a really, really good unit. Anybody who's played any games with the Dominion box set will see how pivotal this is, and the opportunity to expand it and add command elements to it just makes it even more.
Yeah, that Bolt Boy boss with his banner pole just looks great, and is going to give you some extra, sort of clout on the battlefield in terms of being able to use them in different ways. Yeah, I think there's a lot to love here, but let's not kid ourselves. This thing is incredible. It's just so mad. Eddie, this is Swamp Boss Scumdrek. What do you know?
So this is the biggest kit, I think, coming for the Kruleboyz. This is an enormous monster. You don't quite get a sense of the scale of it, but that is a big orc on the back of it. This is a big old kit. There's 2 different ways you can build this. You can build it as a kind of the generic character, or you can build it as this guy, which is Swamp Boss Scumdrek. He is he does a lot of stuff. He does a lot of stuff for your army. So from a narrative perspective, this is one of the kind of Uruk's prized capturers of captives. And when we talked about the Sloggoth earlier on, its job was to kind of go out and round up and capture enemy infantry and kind of drag those back into the Kruleboyz' lairs. This guy is after the prize fighters. So he's kind of eyeing up enemy heroes and wizards and stuff, and he charges off on the back of this thing into the middle of the enemy army, trying to kind of capture those. He's one of the best ways in your army, basically, of taking out enemy heroes. The other thing, the thing he's riding on, is even more deadly than that. So it does a bunch of stuff. One of the things is it's just a big, enormous, massive monster. It's got a particularly horrible bite. So it looks like a kind of combination between a crocodile and a dragon and a hippo and a...
I mean, it's so weird, isn't it?
It's got a little bit of sloth mixed in there as well. It's very unpleasant, but because it's like dripping in toxin, basically, it gets the ability that all Kruleboyz get, even though it's a mount, where its hits cause mortal wounds on 6s. But because it's so toxic, it and any Kruleboyz nearby do even more damage when they hit on 6s. So you can put this thing right in the center of your Uruk army, and they basically, as it walks around, it's kind of leaving this horrible trail of poison, and the orcs are kind of like dipping their spears and shooters and stuff in the poison, and they get bonuses to all of their hits. So it's a kind of linchpin centerpiece for your Uruk force. But it does loads for your army. It's a great kind of area effect buffer for your orcs. It does loads of damage in combat. It can kill enemy heroes. It's going to be the kind of centerpiece linchpin, not just as a model because it's impressive, but also as a gaming piece. It's a kind of a great thing to put in the middle of your Kruleboy force. It's very, very good in game.
Love it. And here is the Snatcher Boss variant of the same kit, essentially.
Yeah, so the other one was the named version. This is the Snatch Boss, and the thing is called the Sludge Raker Beast. It does a similar sort of thing. It's not quite as powerful in some of its abilities, but it does allow you to have multiples where you're so inclined in an army. So you can have like a bunch of these things plodding around, and they're particularly effective. If you think about Kruleboyz, really are the kind of archetypal horde force for Age of Sigmar, in the sense that your basic troopers are okay, but you want lots of them, and then all the things that you mix in amongst the army bolster them and give them extra bonuses and things, and this is just a great force multiplier for your orcs. So you want this guy maybe not running off by himself, but kind of in amongst the rest of your army, and then all the things nearby get better by proximity to him. He's obviously also a pretty durable looking thing. It's got, lots of wounds, a decent save. There's lots of ways to kind of keep it alive and do extra damage to your opponent. So you're going to see a lot of these about, I think, which is cool because the model is super awesome.
Yeah, no kidding. So, of course, with all of these new units that we've had unveiled, we're going to need a place to learn all about them and find all their rules. So it will perhaps come as no surprise to people who get the sense of how these things work. There are also 2 new battle tomes on the way. You have Destruction Battle Tome, Orruk War Plans, and Order Battle Tome, Stormcast Eternals.
Yeah, so first and foremost, I think let's just talk about the covers. They look really, really cool. So the Orruk War Clans one there, we've talked a little bit about this already, but this just to confirm, the Orruk War Clan includes not just the Kruleboyz, but also your Ironjaws and your Bone Splitters. So all of those orcs are kind of go together in this big battle tome. You've also got Kragnos mixed in amongst them as well. So the book allows you to either go, I want everything, I just want a big war, I want everybody's green, get on down, we're going to have a party. Or you can go, I just want Ironjaws, or I just want Kruleboyz, and then you can lean into that and you get bonuses depending on which direction you go with that. The Stormcast one is equally cool. You've got that enormous Great Annihilator there. I think he's pummeling a Chaos Warrior flat into the ground. He's thinking maybe the Chaos Gods work for him after all, but it's too late. And one of the really nice things about the new battle tomes is they expand hugely on the new Path to Glory mechanic. Anybody who's opened up their Age of Sigmar rulebook, if you've managed to resist just looking at the models and building them, painted them today with your Dominion box, you might have had a look inside your new Age of Sigmar rulebook. There's this wonderful new section called Path to Glory, which is a little bit like the Crusade mechanic for Warhammer 40,000, if you're familiar with that, but effectively allows you to kind of build up a force over a series of games and go on quests and kind of build up a fortification and expand your influence and reach and domination over the mortal realms. And there's loads of stuff that's bespoke specially to those factions, which is really, really cool. So if you love narrative play, or even if you're like, I want to mix in a little bit of narrative into my normal games of Warhammer Age of Sigmar, you can do it with these books. And then the last thing is that everything about these 2 armies has been kind of reassessed with these battle tomes as well. This isn't just a new cover for your Stormcast battle tome or your Orruk battle tome. This is, every unit is a little bit different. The skills, the points, the synergies between units, the spells, the prayers, all of that stuff has been looked at. There's a lot of changes, a lot of units that maybe you didn't see much play before are going to get a lot more time on the battlefield. So if you've got a Stormcast or an Orruk army, you should be excited by these battle tomes. There's lots to like about them.
100%. There's a whole bunch of questions, some of which I just don't have the answers for. So people want to know, like, what's the release date, and will there be digital versions, and all those sorts of questions. We will certainly give you the full information on all of that as we get nearer to the release. Whew. Well, my mind is blown. It has been a very exciting 90 minutes or so. What have we had? We've had an hour of amazing hobby roundup, looking at all of everybody's amazing Dominion models and seeing sort of contributions from people around the world. We have seen Bastion Carthalos, the Knight Relictor, the Vanquishers, the Vigilers, the Annihilators, the Marshcrawler Sloggoth, Gut Rippers, Manskewer Bolt Boys, Swamp Boss, Scumdrek, the Snatcher Boss on Sludgeraker Beast, and 2 new battle tomes. That's a lot in about 30 minutes, Eddie.
There's a lot of very cool stuff on the way. I think it's a very exciting time for Age of Sigmar. Remember, this is the first day. This is the first day of the new edition for most people. We've obviously been excited and talking about new edition of Age of Sigmar for some weeks now. But for most people, this is the day where they finally managed to crack their copy of Dominion open and get stuck in. And I think we just wanted to make sure that people knew there's loads more stuff that's really exciting on the horizon for Age of Sigmar. So if you're opening up that box and you're like, you know what, Kruleboyz are great, you're absolutely right, and there's loads more stuff coming you should be excited about.
It's pretty cool, isn't it? Somebody in the chat says, Caney Reroll says, this has been a great day to start getting back into the hobby. Well, welcome back in that case. And it really has been a great day. We've got some questions about Kruleboyz for Warcry. I have no idea.
Warhammer.com eventually in Warcry. I can't imagine. There's probably a swamp somewhere in the 8 points.
Yeah, no doubt. Watch out on warhammercommunity.com for all of the latest news on that sort of thing. I'm sure when there is information to give, we'll be glad to give it to you. So, what remains is to thank everybody who has come and joined in. Big thanks to Nick Peach Richie and Louise from the Warhammer TV team, painters extraordinaire, one and all, who have come and enthused with us about all those great models. And big thank you to all the people who painted them and shared them with us and let us get hyped. Thank you to Raf, the man behind the scenes, who's pressed all the buttons and made sure that everything has run smoothly. To Notley and the Moderati, who have made sure the chat has flowed smoothly. Thank you to all of you in the chat who have been such lovely company. Both, those of you who've asked questions or enthused over the things you've seen. It's been great to have you with us. There have been literally thousands of you. There's like 16,000 right now, and what a great way to kick off this new era for Warhammer Age of Sigmar. The 3rd edition launched officially today. Congratulations and welcome everybody. Finally, Eddie, thank you for knowing all the stuff and making me look better.
I do my best.
Awesome. Right, in that case, if you want to have a summary of anything that you saw here, you can hang around. There'll be a replay, or you can go straight to warhammercommunity.com and look at the summary article, watch the videos again, and just generally get hyped. Welcome to Warhammer Age of Sigmar's 3rd edition. This has been the Warhammer Preview Online Dominion celebration, and it has been our pleasure to host you. We'll see you again very soon.